What's going on, everyone? Welcome on into a live edition of Falcons Today. I'm sorry for the schedule change. I'm actually going to the Hall of Fame game tomorrow. So flying out tonight, had an opportunity to go. I've never been to Canton, never been to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So I'm super excited to go, but had to move the live up one day earlier. We've also got a brand new producer on today's live show, the newest member of the Chat Sports team, Matt Goldman. So he's going to do a great job pushing the buttons. But I want to get everyone settled in quite nicely by shouting out your city for me in the chat as we get ready for today's live show, where we're going to cover some of the training camp news and rumors, storylines, along with some winners and losers. Now that 1 week of training camp is over, we've got the pads on, we're starting to get a better sense as to what the identity of the 2024 Atlanta Falcons will be. So shout out your city for me in the chat. We've got Luke here. What's going on, Mr. Floyd? Good to see you, man. Luke, hope you're doing well. Marlon, what's up, Petey and chat fam? How is everybody doing today? Everybody's doing well. I think you can measure the pulse of the Chat Sports bullpen based on what we get for lunch. Every single day we order something in, and usually we give like one or two options. Today's two options were Panda Express and this salad place. And a lot of the salad places, I don't know if anyone else notices, they all kind of have like the same name. And I don't remember at what places what I like and don't like. Not that I'm a avid salad eater, but I went with that today, trying to be on the healthier side compared to Panda, and it was just meh. I do want to eventually welcome on producer Matt Goldman. Jack will help him kind of get situated when it comes to finding a spot on screen. Floyd, though, is in Potsdam, New York, near Canada. I've got Marlon watching from Tracy, California. And Luke, get in the chat. Let me know where you're tuning in from. But shout out your city for me. Let me know where you're watching from. It's always great to see how far and wide the fan base stretches as we do welcome on the newest member of the Chat Sports team. It is producer Matt Goldman. Matt, if you want to, you got yourself unmuted, so you're halfway there. Little intro?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. My name's Matt. I'm Petey's guy for the day. Hopefully I do a good job for you guys, but hoping I do. I don't know. I wasn't really expecting an intro, but went to Ohio State, so Zach
That's
Harrison,
one hell of an
Tommy
elevator
Togiai.
pitch right there.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if people even like Ohio State. I know we're not a well-liked Tennessee as well, but yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, Petey.
Matt's going to do a great job. We got Floyd saying Matt, Marlon's in the chat, Jim's watching from Wilmington, Delaware. Grand Limousine in the house from ATL as always. Luke's in Canton, Georgia. Newton's in Marietta. Phillips in Augusta, Georgia. Thomasville, Georgia. Rise Up Falcons from James. Shout out your city for me in the chat. Let me know where you are tuning in from. Now, we're going to go through some of the top storylines coming out of the first week of training camp. I really think you guys will enjoy that. And then I thought we somewhat consolidate training camp by running through some of the biggest winners and losers. Now, before we get to that, I do want to tell everyone watching about our friends over at Game Time. So, if you are thinking of catching a Braves game as Jorge Soler makes his return back to Atlanta, although I'm not quite sure where he's going to fit in the lineup, so I'm excited to see what the plan is for that. But regardless, if you want to find the best seats and the best tickets, get started with Game Time today. If you want to go to a Falcons preseason game, a concert, or any sporting event in your local area, Game Time is the place to go first because it's an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. Now, one thing I really like about Game Time is they offer the Game Time guarantee. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Once again, redeem code CHAT SPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. I put all that information in the comments and description of today's video, but download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Okay, so full disclosure, if you see my eyes dotting away a little bit, behind the camera, I've got the Olympics on at the moment. I love the Olympics. I will say this year, I probably have consumed the least amount of the Olympics. I do think the Olympics coming every 4 years sometimes makes it tough for people to consume based on what they've got going on in their life every 4 years, right? Where if you're starting a brand new job when the Olympics start, you're probably not going to spend that first week at your new job watching the Olympics on your computer. But like, for example, the 2016 Olympics were my freshman year of college. So I was very happy to like not do my homework for the first month and watch the Olympics. We got executive producer Jack Lauderay kind of shadowing Golden with his hand up. Jack, you want to offer something to the class? Okay. I wasn't quite sure. Yeah, they needed a bat to try. Not that Ronald had an incredible hitting line this year, but still, he's still Ronald. But favorite Olympic event to watch? I do think when it comes to the Olympics, you got to pick a sport that you never watch the other 4 years. So swimming, for whatever reason, the popularity of swimming you'd think would carry over to some kind of like, I wouldn't say swimming league, but just interest. No. But when the Olympics are on, we're all Dolphins. I like watching beach volleyball. I'm not really interested in Olympic soccer because it seems like such a crappy product compared to every other soccer in the world. Yeah. It's weird how they can't quite get soccer down when it's the most like popular. Oh, it's a goal for Canada. Also, just sometimes like just the most random countries are in there. It's like I don't know if the best countries are actually in the tournament.
PDI did shot put in high school
Okay.
for a bit, so that is an Olympic sport I have tuned in for because I did it for a little bit. You got to, and I'm not a strong dude in any capacity, but those Olympians have to be some strong men and women. Their legs are like tree chunks.
Let's see.
Track and field.
Yeah, Marlon says track and field 100 meters and 200 meters 4x1 relays. Track and field relays especially, that is edge of your seat stuff right there. All of a sudden, everyone starts to become an expert on getting the right guys in the right spots in the relay. James, no, they're not trading Kyle Pitts. I don't know how we got out there. James, it doesn't look like T. Higgins is going anywhere. When he said he would play on his franchise tag this year, which, by the way, not to get too far off topic, I never have too much sympathy when athletes have a true, like, hissy fit over getting the franchise tag. The guy just got $20 million guaranteed. Yeah, the general public is not going to look at that and go, man, they did him dirty. Yeah, so sure, he could be getting a long-term extension instead, but if the consolation prize is $200 million, I would like to be in a competition where that is the consolation prize. That'd be a great one to be in. Jim, do you see Braylon Trice? I'm seeing a lot of good questions. Please put hashtag Falcons somewhere in your question. It's not really a request. It's more of a demand, not to sound needy. But the software we have, it searches the chat for hashtag Falcons, and it will pull the questions that have hashtag Falcons. So if you have a question you want to see on screen for myself to answer, for everyone to see, hashtag Falcons, or if you want to be like Grand Limousine, I would say the MVP of the channel so far this summer for Super Chats. Super Chat, we'll toss it on screen for everyone to see. Shout out to Grand Limousine, one of the most devoted viewers and longtime viewers of the channel. All right, coming up on today's show, we're going to run through the latest news and rumors coming out of training camp. I think you guys will really enjoy what's going on at Flowery Branch because no one can see it. Unfortunately, the Falcons this year do not have a single training camp practice open to the public. The reason being is they're doing some renovations to the area, so no fans allowed this year, but Arthur Blank said next year they plan on doubling the amount of fan open practices. However, Friday, 2 days from now, they will have an open practice at the Bend, so 6 to 8:30. I'm not quite sure what the ticket process is for that, but if you're looking for something to do, that could be fun. Kind of get a cheap seat to go watch Kirk Cousins before the regular season starts. But latest news and rumors, camp winners and losers, and then that mailbag I was just talking about, hashtag Falcons or Super Chat to get on that mailbag. All right, if you have not liked the video, make sure to do so. We're at 17 likes. Let's get ourselves to 20 before we get this plane off the ground, which, speaking of, I have a plane that will get off the ground at 7:01 p.m. Central, so we do have to get a little bit of a move on. But let's talk Atlanta Falcons news and rumors. Ty Man was here earlier, and it was very strange. He was one of the first people to comment, and then his comment deleted. I'm not really sure what happened. So I think Ty Man got a little bit too mainstream for us. Jason Greenway, good to see you, dude. Hope you're having a good day. Okay, let's talk. We got 18 likes. All right, we'll take it. News and rumors coming up right now. A week of Falcons training camp is in the books, and I want to run through my notebook with you guys, starting with the defense during Wednesday's practice finally woke up. Something we have been waiting for. I don't know if it was my mini rant I had last week about the defense getting off to way slow of a start, even for training camp standards, but they woke up, and it was a nice refresher to see. You want to have some healthy competition between the offense and defense. The last thing you want to see is one side of the football dominate the other all camp long. If the defense is dominating in camp, it's going to be a lot like the Falcons offense last year. But the Falcons defense during Wednesday's training camp practice had 6 sacks. 6 sacks. We're almost at Bueller's 9 times. And you can't actually sack the quarterback. So, and this offensive line, I think, is top 10 in the NFL. It's closer to 5 than 10. But the front 5 for the Falcons is a question mark. We just don't really know what to expect when the top 2 sack leaders from last year did not return. But the 6 sacks, they all came from different players as well, which was really cool to see. You had Grady Jarrett, that's awesome. Braylon Trice, the rookie, Kentavious Street, Troy Anderson, Caden Ellis, and Milo Eifert all getting in on the sack fest. Now, as for Michael Penix, if you're wondering what he was looking like going up against this Falcons defense, he's been rotating in with the first and second team offense, but it's not a 50-50 rotation. It's more like 75% with the second team going with the second team offense against second team defense and 25% against the first team. So just giving Kirk Cousins a little bit of a breather a little bit from time to time as he works his way back from his Achilles injury. But getting back to the defense and maybe the middle of it, defensive tackle Eddie Goldman. So remember Eddie Goldman. He signed with the Falcons in 2021. He retired. He came back the next year, retired, came back again this year, and this time it looks like it's going to stick. Eddie Goldman has gotten off to a really strong start so far in camp. The reports coming out of Flowery Branch are the way he showed up to training camp at the end of July, he was in much better shape than when he showed up to OTAs and stuff back in the spring. A lot of guys kind of take those 6 weeks off after minicamp and before training camp, and I think coaches can tell which guys really worked during that 6-week stretch and which guys maybe enjoyed some vacations and breakfast buffets. And for a big guy like Eddie Goldman, it can be very easy to get tempted by the breakfast buffets. Not this guy. No. Eddie Goldman was spotted running with the first team offense on numerous occasions as if he's going to be a mainstay, which, if you think about it, that's not too surprising since, like, the last time he was on the NFL field, he was a starter, right? Second-round draft pick by the Chicago Bears. He was a permanent starter on that defensive line right in the middle. They ran, when he was there, they went from a 4-3 defense to a 3-4, but still, he was that nose tackle, middle of the field, middle of the line, like David Onyemata. And his best season by far was 2018. The Bears, remember, that's when they went to the playoffs. And fortunately for Chicago fans, not the outcome they were looking for in that first round against the Eagles, but 3 sacks, 40 tackles. He put together some really good campaigns. But then he skips 2020 because of COVID. And at the end of 2021, there were a lot of question marks in Chicago about just how much Eddie Goldman was committed to this team and how much commitment he had to the sport in general, which why it wasn't too surprising for the folks in the Windy City that after signing with the Falcons, he ended up retiring. But here we are, starting the 2024 season, and Eddie Goldman, I think, could be a real X factor for Atlanta. Let's just be honest with one another. This Falcons defense is not loaded with a bunch of perennial Pro Bowl talent at the edge and outside linebacker position. So if you can generate some extra pressure from the interior, because Eddie Goldman, for being a nose tackle, has proven he can find the quarterback, plus he's a great run stopper. Then you really add in that you're going to have 2 defensive tackles over the age of 30, one coming off a torn ACL. I don't think Grady Jarrett and David Onyemata still have that same energy they had 5 years ago. So they might need an extra breather or two. And if you can have a reliable rotational piece like Eddie Goldman filling in, man, those three guys, they're going to play at a high level from the first quarter to the fourth quarter, from the first week to the 18th week. And that's a position group that as the game goes on and as the season goes on, they start to lose a little bit of energy. Hopefully that won't be a problem for Atlanta with having Eddie Goldman. Another piece of the defense I want to talk about is Mike Hughes, who appears to have really grabbed the CB2 job by the horns and has run with it. Now, if you go back to the spring, it was predominantly Clark Phillips lining up opposite of A.J. Terrell at the CB2 job, but there was always a good amount of rotation going on, getting different looks and different personnel on the field. But the consensus is, after the first week of training camp, Mike Hughes has been running with the first-team defense more than Phillips at that CB2 job. Now, some background on Hughes. He was a first-round draft pick by the Minnesota Vikings back in 2018. He didn't stick in Minnesota for too long, only there for 3 years before beginning to become a bit of a journeyman player. In his career, he's got 22 starts in 72 games, so he's predominantly been a backup cornerback really since the day he was drafted, late round 1. Now, a season ago, his first year with the Falcons, he was still a backup for Jeff Okudah, and then when they benched Okudah, they still primarily went with Clark Phillips as the outside corner. But 21 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1 pass breakup. We've seen Hughes flirt with inside and outside as a corner. Now, when it comes to the CB2 battle, we're going to have a winner at the end of training camp, and that winner will be the guy that suits up week 1 opposite of Terrell. I don't think that the battle is done, though. I think this is going to be a battle that goes into the season, where every single week there's going to be a reassessment for Mike Hughes. That's not the case for, like, A.J. Terrell. If A.J. Terrell has a bad week or 2 or, God forbid, 3 in a row, they're not looking to bench him. If Mike Hughes has a bad week and it's just 1, that's how short the leash could be till, all right, let's give Clark Phillips a look. So this battle, well, it will have a winner at the end of training camp, and it very well could be Hughes if he holds on to the job, which he currently holds. But it's not going to go away just because training camp's over. Now, before we look at the other notes I've got out of camp, if you want some Falcons preseason watch parties, help us reach 23,000 subscribers. We're a little under 300 subs away. So lock yourself in, and that's the number we need to get the green light from my bosses, to get studio space and a producer to do some more watch parties. Second note I want to reiterate, and you've probably heard it a bunch from other outlets, but I'll beat a dead horse. Kyle Pitts is dominating. Like, there is off-season Kool-Aid, there's off-season training camp hype, and then there's legitimate, this has legs. Kyle Pitts' domination so far in the first week of camp is more than just like, ooh, that's one nice highlight from Twitter. No. Ask anyone with a pair of eyeballs at Falcons training camp about Kyle Pitts, and they'll tell you he's been probably the best player on the field on both ends. I'll elaborate on that in just a moment, but I do want to show some love to our friends over at Game Time. If you want to get started with the best place to find some tickets for an upcoming Braves game or any other sporting event in your area, download Game Time today. Now, Game Time has this awesome feature called Flash Deals, where you can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. Plus, they offer the Game Time guarantee. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Once again, redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but I put all that information in the comments and description of today's video. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Now, if you're looking for an absolute just headline for training camp so far, the 2 stars in my eyes have been Kirk Cousins and then Kyle Pitts. And unfortunately for Kyle Pitts, we just know how the football world operates. Quarterbacks always get a bigger shine and a bigger spotlight, but Kyle Pitts definitely deserves a spotlight and a big one too. So hopefully we'll get the best season yet out of Pitts, something closer to his 2021 season. But I've seen a lot of people say that, listen, Pitts this year looks a lot more like that 2021 version of himself or the beginning of 2022 before he suffered that knee injury midway through the 2022 season. But the consensus, like I said, has been Kyle Pitts has looked the best in a while. Like, sure, we haven't seen a ton of padded practices yet, and when you're a physical freak and practices aren't predicated on physicality, sometimes you can separate yourself from the pack a little bit, but I'm choosing to be a simp. I'm drinking the Kyle Pitts Kool-Aid. I'm a believer in him for this season. Now, I know that a lot of people have trust issues with Kyle Pitts, and you're not wrong for that. Like, fortunately, the last 2 seasons have been underwhelming. Like, let's just call it what it is. Have not lived up to the expectations we probably all had when he was a top 5 draft pick. But I have reason to believe that this year there will be a bit of a turnaround. He's healthy, and his quarterback is no longer Desmond frickin' Ridder. Kirk Cousins. That's going to do a lot of favors for number 8. Fourth thing that popped up on my training camp radar that might not have garnished a ton of attention elsewhere, but it caught my eye. A.J. Terrell and his contract situation. Now, Terrell has been an absolute pro about this. He's not holding in. He's not holding out. He's not having a hissy fit. He's going to play, and he's going to let his agent work out the contract, and when the phone call comes in for an extension, he'll be happy. But until then, he's focused on being the best possible cornerback for this team. Now, Terry Fontenot, when speaking to the media today, was asked, hey, what's going on with Mr. Terrell's contract? And he said he has no comment on Terrell's contract and any possible extension at this time. That's not the greatest thing to hear. Not that that's an absolute dagger. GMs tend to avoid talking about player contracts to the media. But when there is a guy that the team is absolute about extending, usually the response is something like, hey, we're not going to comment on any player's contract, but we love this guy, and we're going to make sure we do everything in our power to keep him here for as long as possible. I didn't get that sense when this question was asked to Fontenot. So hopefully we'll get a really good season out of A.J. Terrell. I mean, the last 2 years, from just a box score perspective, were not as eye-popping as his first 2 seasons. 4 picks, 23 pass breakups, 4 forced fumbles. The ball production has dipped. And there are some factors into it. I think some of it could just be placed on Terrell himself for just not executing and getting himself in the right spot. But I also think it's a little bit more difficult to come up with interceptions when the ball stops coming your way. Like, look at the targets his first 2 years compared to the last 2 years. When they target you 40 times fewer over the last 2 seasons, which isn't some sharp decline, but it is a noteworthy decline, you're just not going to have as many opportunities to make those big plays. Now, you can still come up with at least 1 interception in 156 targets, so that's where the blame can be spread around a little bit, but I think there is some more context to why Terrell the last 2 years wasn't as big of a producer the first 2 years. Now, what could an extension look like? We've kind of covered this subject before, but I'll refresh everyone's memories. You can check out the highest paid corners in the NFL. I don't think Terrell is pushing to become a top 3 highest paid corner. I don't think he's got, a ton of leverage to get that number 2 to start his contract. But I think he could land a 4-year, $72 million contract. That would pay him $18 million a season and make him the 9th highest paid corner, right? So for the Falcons, they lock up CB1 for at least the next 3 years because all contracts are always minus 1 year. Look at the guaranteed money, which in this case would probably be about $60 million. So 3 years, $60 million, maybe 55, but we're arguing over a couple of pennies here. I think it's wise for Atlanta to lock Terrell up. I mean, you've already got 1 question mark at the other cornerback position. Do you really want to go into next offseason searching for 2 new starting corners? Now, with the new defense coming in, the Falcons are going to go away from a man defense, which Terrell has really thrived in, and go more towards a zone defense, which is what Raheem Morris has done in L.A. My suspicion is the Falcons want to wait and see how Terrell performs in that zone defense. Like, if he gets off to a horrible start the first 6 weeks, they're probably not going to be in a major rush to extend him. But once they see that he can actually thrive in that new scheme, which I think he's capable of doing, I think there'll be a lot of motivation to get a midseason extension done. Now, our trivia question for today, before we look at the final training camp note after week 1, can you name the 2 Falcons in the not NFL, Pro Football Hall of Fame that are also in the Falcons Ring of Honor? So I'll give you kind of a hint. Brett Favre is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and he goes in as technically a Falcon. Even though he's not really a Falcon, he did, get drafted by them and whatnot, so he does go down as a Falcon in the Hall of Fame. So there's only 2 guys that are Falcon in the Hall of Fame and in the Atlanta Falcons' very own Ring of Honor. Let's see if we can get at least one of those 2. Fourth and final note, kind of one to end on, not a happy note necessarily, depending on what conspiracy theories you believe in, but an intriguing note, as most teams kind of have their rookies go through some, hazing's a big, scary trigger word, but some level of it of, hey, you're the new guy, you're going to carry my helmet and shoulder pads in after practice. That type of stuff is not uncommon, but the Falcons are going about it a little bit differently. They're having their rookies, as they stay over at the facility during training camp, as a team building exercise, having the rookies present PowerPoint arguments for conspiracy theories. So far, linebacker JT Bertrand is the most persuasive, Kirk Cousins said. Won't say subject, but, quote, I can't go there, it's too edgy. Now, everyone loves to have that one conspiracy theory that they're a big believer in. And I thought about going through my top conspiracy theories I believe in. I'm not a huge conspiracy theorist believer. I really don't like the idea, and maybe this is just me being too big of a patriot, but the idea that we faked the moon landing. Do you know how many people worked at NASA? How many people have to keep that lie going? So I don't buy that one whatsoever. I used to be somewhat of a believer that Hitler did not commit suicide. YouTube's not going to like that word. But yeah, the H-man did not commit suicide, and that he got on a plane and went to Argentina and Brazil. No, I don't think that one anymore. I spent a whole day in bed watching this Discovery Channel going through it all. So the only one that I actually think has some serious legs to it is the Denver airport one, which I'm not really sure what it is, other than there was a budget and a timeline for Denver to complete their airport. They vastly exceeded their budget, and it took an extra 3 years because they're building some government tunnels essentially underneath the airport, going into the mountains of the Rockies as a doomsday home to go to. I don't think the government's even trying to hide that one anymore. If you've ever been to the Denver airport, it's very weird. And lately they've been doing some construction, and even the little walls that hide the construction, they make jokes about, we're doing conspiracy shit over here. So I'll go with the Denver airport one. Let me know what conspiracy theory do you believe the most? Okay, going back to that trivia question though. Name the 2 Falcons in the Hall of Fame and the Ring of Honor. There's only 2 guys that overlap. There's 11 Falcons in the Hall of Fame. And until Arthur Blank and Matt Ryan get inducted, there are 9 players in the Falcons Ring of Honor. Those 2 guys overlapping, former defensive lineman Claude Humphrey, and of course, primetime Deion Sanders. So I was surprised to see such little overlap, but there it is. Tony Gonzalez. I know he didn't play too long for the Falcons, so maybe you don't want to be too liberal with just handing out Ring of Honors to great players at the end of their career, but that's an example of, wow, kind of would have thought he'd be in the Ring of Honor. All right, that will do it for us on today's show. I appreciate everyone for hanging out with us. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll catch up with you all later on another edition of Falcons Today. Grand Limousine with a $20 super chat. Everyone spam Mr. Limousine in the chat. Number 1 spot to get the best wheels in all of ATL. Let's go. Draven, I see your question. Use hashtag Falcons somewhere in your question so our software can pull it and put it on screen like Grand Limousine super chat. Matthew Petey fan, good to see you. Buddy Bear's here. Have you heard the conspiracy theory that JonBenet Ramsey didn't really die and she grew up to be Katy Perry? I never got into the JonBenet Ramsey murder mystery. My dad did and my sister did. I don't know if, not that I'm not interested in that stuff, just I think there's always some things that you just miss. Part of my take recently did a great Mountain Rushmore of shows or movies that you never saw that everyone else has seen. I've never seen from start to finish a single Harry Potter movie. And everyone's got you all laugh at me, but you also have something that you're embarrassed to say you've never seen start to finish. No, not movies, but just like cult favorites, longtime shows, movie franchises. Yeah. I've never seen Sopranos, which I know are awesome. I've never seen Godfather. Like, it just, I know. And I'm not saying I wouldn't like these things, but it's just, it hasn't happened. Yeah. I've never seen any of the Fast and Furiouses. Yeah. I'm not a big car guy, though. So, everyone's got one. Everyone's got one. My most criminal one would definitely be Harry Potter, and I have no interest in watching Harry Potter. Yeah, I'm not a big sci-fi guy. That's just not my cup of tea. So, everyone out themselves. What's the most embarrassing show? Now, if you say The Office, and I mean this with my entire heart, go fuck yourself. People that don't watch The Office, they feel like they've gone so long without watching it. It's cool to say they haven't watched The Office. It's not cool. It's the greatest show in American television history. You got to watch The Office. I can't believe that has to be said. Goldman, are you about to come out here and say you never watched The Office?
I've never binged it in full, but I've seen most of the episodes at this point.
Okay, that's not so bad then.
What's your favorite comedy show?
Comedy show, The
Sitcom.
Office. So this will sound super basic of me, but I am a true Office number one fan. I would download the episodes on iTunes when they would drop back in 2006. That's what The Office was to me. I grew up in Tokyo, Japan. I lived there from the ages of 5 to 10. So we didn't have a whole bunch of American television, as you could imagine. So we would find some favorite shows and just download them on iTunes. The two shows my family watched the most, it'd be appointment television. And by the way, the shows would come out on iTunes time or time in Japan on iTunes at 6 a.m. So we'd have family movie nights starting at 6:30 in the morning before school and work. So I'll say this, the two things we download on iTunes were The Office and Hell's Kitchen, Gordon Ramsay. We were a huge Hell's Kitchen household. Yeah, fire away, Jack.
So, okay.
Get the mic.
I want to make this abundantly clear off the top. I think The Office is a better made, better show. I want to just say that off the top.
You're gonna say you like Parks and Rec more.
I like Parks and Rec better than I like personal preference like Parks and Rec. The Office is a better show.
You know what that is?
I want to make that abundantly clear.
Though you also like Popeyes more than Chick-fil-A.
No, I like Chick-fil-A more than Popeyes.
Those are those that's the same type of person, same Venn diagram.
I will say the Popeyes.
Cane's is good.
I will say the Popeyes chicken sandwich is better than the Chick-fil-A chicken sandwich.
I actually used to be on that team, and then I got slapped in the face once. I was like, "What am I doing here? Come on."
I think The Office is a classic. It is a better show. Mm-hmm. I just prefer Parks and Rec more.
Grand Limousine, that's a fair one to out yourself on.
What about Big Bang Theory? That's
have not seen Curb Your I've seen Curb. I love Curb. I've seen it a dozen times, start to finish. We actually had Curb Your Enthusiasm a part of our trivia question yesterday. I host trivia every Tuesday night at a bar, and Curb snuck into the last question.
Big Bang Theory, that's my show.
Jason Greenway, I've seen. Let's see. Buddy's saying he's never seen the movie Elf. If it's just one movie, you got to watch the one movie. If it's a whole franchise, I can understand why you're that's a bit much. Right now in the Olympics, they've gone to the 3-on-3 basketball tournament. It's actually, I don't really know what went into it. It's pretty embarrassing that Jimmer Fredette is one of our guys.
That's not embarrassing.
He's a
legend.
This is a nation full of the greatest basketball players in the world. And we're sending guys named Jimmer, and I think Canyon is another guy.
Well, also, for the women, it's Haley Van Lith.
It has to. First off, it should have been
she's still in college.
Kyle Korver should have been an absolute must for this.
I thought she graduated. Oh, no, yeah.
Dude, we're getting manhandled by Poland. That's what you get for sending 35-year-old Jimmer.
Do we have a handball team?
I don't know if we have a handball team.
I feel like that would be fun to watch.
Okay. Let's get into our next segment. Falcons training camp winners and losers. So, who has been smelling the best and who has not been the best so far after a week of training camp? We'll get you guys set up for that. Jason Greenway, appreciate you putting your question in the chat. Jim going with Always Sunny. Archangel's here. Okay, are we ready to jump into it? Okay. I didn't even know Poland could field a 3-on-3, a three-person basketball team. I guess so. You're right. The guy shoots free throws granny style. He made it.
Someone agrees with
This
me.
was the best we could send.
Jimmer
We have
is the GOAT.
Jackie Moon at the line. All right, here we go. We ready to jump into it? What's going on, everyone? Coming up on today's show, we're going to run through some of the top winners and losers after the first week and change of Falcons training camp. Now, before we start, make sure to like today's video. If you enjoy the content we put out, it would greatly help grow the channel. So with that being said, let's get into our first winner, which Captain Obvious, and you've heard it all over the place, but I would not be doing my job correctly if I did not lead with Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins has been such a breath of fresh air compared to the last couple of quarterbacks and just quarterback play, I'd say, the last 3 years. The last year, Matt Ryan, Falcons legend. We don't need to go down that rabbit hole. We all know that. But we can all admit, 2021 Matt Ryan wasn't the best. He was better than what followed, though, of Mariota, Ritter, and Heineke. And I think Falcons fans, and not just fans, but also the front office learned, man, were we spoiled. We had nearly 15 years of consistent quarterback play, never had to do a quarterback search, and, man, they quickly found out how much that sucked and decided, yeah, we're going to spend $180 million, so we never have to do that again. But Kirk Cousins has been as advertised. I mean, he comes off a season where, sure, he unfortunately had to cut short due to the Achilles injury. But before then, the guy was throwing 18 touchdowns in 8 games. He was on pace for, stats-wise, the best year of his NFL career. He would have been right up against 5,000 yards, 18 touchdowns in 8 games. He was going to be clearing over 30 touchdown passes. And I think the best thing we've seen out of Kirk Cousins is there's been no injury fatigue or concerns. Like Kirk Cousins joked that they were doing an 11-on 11 drill in the red zone, I think, and he decided to tuck in and run. No one was open. He picked up 6 yards. Raheem Morris ran on the field screaming, "Blow the whistle, stop the play," because he did not like seeing his quarterback running with it coming off an Achilles injury. And Cousins said, I think I gave Raheem Morris a bit of a heart attack, but it just goes to show he can still move, he can still play football. There's not days where Cousins goes, you know what, the Achilles is kind of flaring up, I'm going to take off today. That has not been a concern. It's not been an issue. And that was probably the biggest concern and biggest issue when you decide to go sign Kirk Cousins at his age with that injury. Now, before we get to the next winner or loser from training camp, if you're excited for legit quarterback play to come back to the ATL, hit that thumbs up button down below. It hasn't been there the last 2 years, kind of 3 years, but, Matt Ryan looks a whole lot better than 2022 and 2023 quarterbacks. So if you are just excited that you no longer have to go through that absolute hellhole of just no idea who your next quarterback's going to be for the long term, hit that thumbs up button. First loser, I've got cornerback Clark Phillips. I don't think Clark Phillips is a loser, but I think that the way the depth chart is shaken out, he's not where I thought he'd be, and I think where he thought he would be, right? Mike Hughes has claimed that CB2 job opposite of A.J. Terrell. Defensive coordinator Jimmy Lake has been very outspoken or very upbeat, I should say, about Mike Hughes. So we're seeing some support and overall encouragement coming from his own coach. So I thought it'd be Clark Phillips starting at CB2. And listen, we still have a long ways to go until week 1 against Pittsburgh. But for the time being, it is let's ride Mike Hughes, right? If he's going to be the starting cornerback on this team with Terrell, let's embrace it and let's hope for the best. Am I going to be a big better on Mike Hughes having a phenomenal year? not really. Like, I know that's not what you want to hear. And during training camp, all 32 fan bases just want to be told good news. And I understand, like, I'm the same way. We've waited so long for football. You don't want to start football returning with bad news. But, I'm going to be a little bit on the I'll believe it when I see it side. Mike Hughes, former first-round pick by the Vikings. He played last year with Atlanta, mostly as a backup. Year before that, 1 season in Detroit. Then year before that in Kansas City. I mean, we can check out his Pro Football Focus grades the last 3 years where he has seen the most amount of snaps after being pretty much just a special teamer with the Vikings to start his career. I mean, the PFF grades and ranks, they kind of speak for themselves. They're not the only way to evaluate players. They're just a tool. But, yeah, that's why I'm in the camp of I'll believe it when I see it. And I was a little bit more upbeat about Clark Phillips because I liked the pick when it was made. Great ball production. And overall, with Mike Hughes, I feel like you kind of know what you're getting. Whereas with Clark Phillips, there's a little bit of the unknown. And the unknown could be really good or it could be really bad. But I like rolling the dice on the really good. So for now, it looks like it's Mike Hughes, which kind of means Clark Phillips is a little bit of a loser. But you know what I mean, through the first week of training camp. All right, before we move on to our next winner, if you want to get started with Game Time, listen up because they're going to have awesome deals for Dirty Birds when it comes to getting Braves tickets, Falcons preseason tickets, or any other sporting event in your local area. So download the Game Time app today, and when you do, use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Now, Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. Now, take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. I put all that information in the comments and description of today's video. Terms apply, but download the Game Time app and use code CHAT Sports for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Kirk Cousins has been the biggest winner so far through camp, but right on his heels, his tight end Kyle Pitts. If you want to sound smart in front of your friends and you haven't really consumed too much of Falcons training camp, just say the following. Kyle Pitts is back because that's the way he has looked so far throughout training camp. Michael Scott moment, I am prepared to get hurt again. Like, we have all been on this road. We've all drafted Kyle Pitts too early in our fantasy leagues. We've all been disappointed. But this year's different. This year it's really different. For 2 main reasons. Reason number 1, he's healthy. It was evident to start last year in training camp, Pitts was still really working his way back from the knee surgery, and that lingered into the season. But once he got healthy, don't you think the production would have been better? Yeah, sure. Except he had dog water quarterback play. There was a carousel and a back and forth going on between Ritter and Heineke, and Pitts got somewhat lost in the shuffle, and now there's some blood on his hands for being underwhelming. It's not completely, absolved from his wrongdoings. Like, there's things he can work on, but so far throughout training camp, Kyle Pitts, and this is so cliche, I hate myself, but he's looked like he's in the best shape of his life. I mean, he truly does look like he is back to what he looked like kind of, not just coming out of Florida, but after his rookie season. Like, just from a physicality standpoint, the size and speed, he's a unicorn, and it's showing on the practice field. So, yeah, he's been a big winner so far at training camp. He has looked awesome. Now, what is your confidence level in Kyle Pitts? Scale it for me, 1 to 10. Put that number in the comment section below. Be honest, I'd put myself at a 7.7. I can't go above an 8. Like, I need to see it a little bit before I can truly go that high, but I'm definitely buying some Kyle Pitts stock. Now, my second loser, I'm going to go with third-string quarterback Taylor Heineke. Yeah, you heard me. Third string. He was the second string back in the spring. Michael Penix has passed Taylor Heineke on the quarterback depth chart. Now it goes Kirk Cousins, undoubted QB1. That does not have to be said, but just in case it does. And then Michael Penix, and then Taylor Heineke. So then the question starts to become, okay, if Heineke's not even the backup, do you want to have that big of a cap investment in your third string quarterback? Maybe, maybe not. So that's where someone like John Paddock, a UDFA from Illinois, he might creep onto the roster. He might not be better than Heineke, but he's a whole lot cheaper. And the Falcons may decide, we're just not going to have that big of a contract and cap hit for someone who's not even our backup quarterback. So for Heineke, he's got to prove, like, I'm worthy of that cap hit, even if I am just the third string quarterback. Today's trivia question, I'll admit, is tough. I did not know the answer before I looked it up myself. Can you name the last Falcons defensive coordinator who held that role for 3 straight seasons? You don't have to go back way too far, but you got to go back a little bit. So I'll be impressed if anyone can get this correct. Last Falcons DC to hold down the fort for 3 consecutive seasons. Third and final winner, I've got to go with defensive tackle Eddie Goldman. You talk to anyone that's been to Falcons training camp so far, and a couple of names tend to surface. Kyle Pitts, Kirk Cousins, Jesse Bates. They're kind of expected. They're stars. They should surface. But Eddie Goldman's a name that I did not expect to hear, and I keep hearing his name. Now, Eddie Goldman's got an interesting story. He was a second-round pick by the Bears almost a decade ago at this point, believe it or not. He leaves Chicago in free agency after 2021, signs with the Falcons. He never plays a single preseason snap with the Falcons because he retired not once, but twice. But now Eddie Goldman has come back again, and this time it looks like it is for real. So I'm excited to see what Eddie Goldman can bring to the table this year. I think at the very least, he's going to be an above-average rotational interior defensive lineman. I mean, there are certain positions that don't leave the field. Corner, safeties, those guys play 100% of the snaps. Your defensive linemen, they rotate in and out. Now, when you take off your number one defensive tackle like Grady Jarrett and David Onyemata, you hope that the other team does not exploit that weakness on the field. When your backup is a starter like Eddie Goldman, because all he did in Chicago was start, you're going to feel a lot more comfortable about rotating your interior D linemen. Now, the Falcons, it's no secret, they don't have a ton of proven talent at the exterior edge rusher position. They're hoping for a big year from Arnold Ebiketie. They're hoping that Lorenzo Carter, kind of switching back to a 3-4 defense, can kind of get back to where he was in 2022. But there's no guy on this team that's got 10 sacks in his NFL career. So if you're not going to have someone who's been a proven edge rusher, you're not going to get that from the outside very much. Do you know where quarterbacks hate getting pressure from the most? Interior defensive line. So if you're not going to get it from the exterior, let's get it from the interior. Now, before we get on out of here, shout out your city for me in the chat. Let me know where you are tuning in from. Always great to see where people are watching from. This fan base knows no boundaries. It stretches from coast to coast. So get in the chat and shout out your city for me down below. Now, that Falcons trivia question for today. The last Falcons defensive coordinator for 3 straight seasons. Any guesses? Answer coming up in 3, 2, 1. That would be Mike Nolan from 2012 to 2014. We'll go back to the Mike Smith era. So Mike Nolan, who after Atlanta, he went to Dallas, and I don't know where he went after that. So let's see if anyone got the question correct, but I appreciate everyone for watching. We're going to sign off. We'll let you guys get back to the rest of your day. Appreciate everyone for hanging out with us all the way to the end of the video. If you're still watching, remember to like, subscribe, all those cliches. But go one step further. Shout out your city for me. That way I know who watches all the way until the end of the video. Who got the trivia question? Mike Nolan, Grand Limousine. Let's go. We got Jim Brody in the chat. Tony Rhodes. I don't think Zion Logue's going to have that big of a role this year. I'll be honest. Not looking great. Travis is tuning in from Richmond. I got Rich in Tampa. Jason, as always, our sunny San Diego resident. Let me know where you're watching from. Always fun to have a nice back and forth with you guys at home. ATLian, he go bye-bye. Grand Limousine at a 7. Archangels at an 8. Mason B, what's going on? Mason B, I mentioned it at the top of the show, but if you're just tuning in, I had to move the live up, and shame on me, from Thursday to Wednesday because I had an opportunity to go to Canton for the Pro Football Hall of Fame game and the museum. So I've never been. I didn't want to pass on it. So we moved the live from Thursday to Wednesday for this week. Just 1 week only, so my bad. But I'm very excited for it. Like I said, I've never been before. I love museums. I used to hate being dragged to mostly art museums when I was younger. Now I'm the one doing the dragging. Mason B coming from Denver, Colorado. We've got Modesta, California here. Snap Edwards in East Atlanta. Mason B, always appreciate you, my man. All right, we have a mailbag coming up next on the show. So get your questions in right now. Hashtag Falcons or Super Chat like Mr. Grand Limousine. If you Super Chat, we guarantee your question gets on screen. So if you've got one that pops in your mind and you want to support the channel, Super Chat's greatly appreciated. Or go hashtag Falcons and producer Matt Goldman will pick his favorite question. So who knows what he is going to pick. But I want to call on Mason B and Snap Edwards to get a question in the chat right now. Can be anything. Can be training camp, trade, free agency, anything under the sun. Get a question in. I'm calling out you two right now because you're the last two to comment. So let's get some questions going in the chat. We've got Mr. Goldman ready on the 1s and 2s. Archangels watching from McDonough by way of College Park, Georgia. Archangel, did I tell you guys about I was caught in the crossfire of the computer outage with Delta and my flight getting canceled? I was in your neck of the woods, College Park, getting a rental car. Waited in line for 2.5 hours to get the rental car, and then embarked on a 12-hour drive from Atlanta back here to Dallas. And that felt like a win, which looking back, it probably was because I did not want to get stranded at the airport for 3 straight days. Emrod watching from Cancun. We had a Chat Sports contingency just come back from Cancun, a bachelor party. I've kind of zeroed in on my bachelor party for next year. New Orleans has always been a favorite, visit city of mine. It's a great place for a weekend. Archangel, it's okay. I was thinking, man, what would be, could you imagine if I walked up to the front desk of the rental car and Archangel was working there? And he's looking at me car's on the house, dude. Let's get you home. We got some Falcons Today videos to make. Okay. Grand Limousine, appreciate you. Are we ready to jump into a live mailbag? All right, if you have any question that comes into your mind, hashtag Falcons, Team USA beats South Sudan 103-86. Or Super Chat like Grand Limousine. If you Super Chat, we guarantee it gets on screen for all of our great viewers to see. All right, here we go. Snap Edwards. Oh, Snap Edwards, take your question, copy and paste it back into the chat, but don't put a space between hashtag and the word Falcons. I like this question from Mason B. I like it. Okay, here we go. Let's jump into a live Falcons mailbag. What's going on, everyone? Welcome into a live Falcons mailbag as our questions are being answered live during our show, which traditionally airs every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. I had to move it up one day because by the time you're watching this, I'm kind of enjoying a weekend trip to Canton, Ohio for the Pro Football Hall of Fame game and museum. So, with that being said, we can start to answer some of the questions you guys have for us during our live show. First question coming in from Dravin. How's Brandon Dorlus been doing? Was very excited we grabbed him, but haven't heard much about him in training camp. So this question, or this answer, applies to not just Brandon Dorlus, but across the league. Rookie, defensive linemen, edge rushers, they're not going to pop up much the first week or so of training camp because the pads don't come on until after the 4th or so practice. It's very difficult for any defensive lineman to get attention when the pads aren't on because they can't really make much contact. They're just kind of like bumping titties. But once the pads come on, then they can start to get some eyeballs on them because they can start to do their job. So early on, we haven't seen much of Brandon Dorlus. I did see that he was actually rotating in a little bit with the first team, kind of ahead of rookie Rukaroro. So that's something. But then the very next day, you saw more of Rook. So they're going to see coaches get a lot of different looks and personnel in. And don't read too much into, man, this guy was with the first team today. Man, he's a starter. No, tomorrow he's with the second team. And they go back and forth. And after the first week or so, they start to get a better idea as to which guy is in which tier. Draven, appreciate your question, though. Jason Greenway, how likely is the Judon to the Falcons talk? CHAT for our friends at Game Time. Jason, and anyone else watching, I'm filming this on Wednesday, so hopefully it does not get dated. Sorry for the gong in the background. That's Chat Sports for you. But how likely is it? I'm not going to say it's got like a high probability of happening. The first thing that you need to see happen is the Patriots decide we're not going to reach a resolution, which I saw a report, I believe, from Diana Rossini that the Patriots had made a contract offer to Matthew Judon. So clearly New England has some interest on their end for getting a deal done, which is a bit of a dampener because I thought we'd see more of a standoff that could result in a trade, but I put a percentage at like 10. I'm not even sure exactly how much interest the Falcons have in Judon specifically. Archangel, next one up, dude. Since we used to carry 3 backs, Bijan, Tyler, and Cordero Patterson, and it worked out fairly well, I'd say, why wouldn't it be reliable to work out now? And we're talking about a Bama back in Jace McClellan. Let me give you my best Colin Cowherd analogy. With Arthur Smith, you ran a much more run-heavy offense. The Falcons were 32nd in 11 personnel, which is 1 running back, 1 tight end, 3 wide receivers. So they used a lot of multiple running back and tight end looks. So if you're going to have a bunch of running backs or a bunch of plays designed around running backs, you're going to want to have some good depth at that position. Now they're going to have a way more 11 personnel look of 3 wide receivers. So you might want to give an extra roster spot from a running back to a wide receiver. I still think the Falcons will take 3 backs, but I don't think they're going to have as much usage as they did before, right? So the Colin Cowherd analogy would be like, if you're cooking for 10 carnivores and 1 vegetarian, you're probably going to make 9 burgers and 1 chicken sandwich. I'm just kidding. I don't chicken. But 9 burgers and 1 salad. If you now have 9 vegetarians and 1 carnivore, you're probably not going to make the same amount of burgers as you did before. So as the offensive scheme adjusts, the personnel should reflect that. You don't want to cram a circle into a square. And I don't want to see the Falcons do that by keeping the same personnel from a different regime that ran different plays. Does that make some sense? Mason B. Petey is visiting the Hall of Fame this week. Which current Falcons will eventually be inducted into Canton? First thing that pops in my head is Kirk Cousins. Now, with how many quarterbacks got in decades ago, compared to the quarterbacks today, like, part of my French, dog shit stats, like, the guys back then were throwing 1 touchdown every other week, and they're Hall of Famers. So when you go like stat for stat, Kirk Cousins will blow out a lot of current Hall of Fame quarterbacks out of the water. I think Kirk Cousins will be a Hall of Famer. I don't know if that's a hot take. I don't think he'll be a first ballot, but I think he will get into Canton. I just think he's been too consistent for too long at too high of a level to not get it. I think he's somewhat of this generation's like Phillip Rivers. Not quite as good as Rivers, but he's not far off. So I'll say Kirk Cousins, and defensively, I don't think Grady Jarrett's a Hall of Famer. Jesse Bates is probably not a Hall of Famer, although if he continues playing the way he did last year, he probably will make it, but I'll say Kirk. Now, speaking of just reaching the top of the game, what's your favorite Olympic event to watch? I love watching Olympic events that I usually don't consume during my normal sports habits. Like, I'm not interested too much in, like, I like obviously watching Team USA basketball, but like swimming all of a sudden becomes way more interesting to me. So let me know your favorite Olympic event to watch. I'll put in a little bit of a sneaky one in there. Like, little sand volleyball action, some Misty May trainer, that's going to get some eyeballs. Not in a pervy way, but in a good sports way. Grand Limousine. Should we be concerned to start the season without a proven edge rusher? Yeah. Like, when it's the off season, you can kind of look at everything half glass full and be optimistic. And if anyone says to the contrary, you just kind of toss them off as a hater. And I don't want that negativity. I want to be an upbeat fan. And I operate somewhat the same way. But then when the season starts and if there's an issue at pass rusher, that same person that told you that issue before the season, you don't really care that they were right before. Because now you're all in the same boat of crap. So I think there should be some concern. I don't think me saying that's going to really spark a whole lot, though. Because if I end up being right, no one's going to care. No one wants to listen to the guy that was right about something negative, right? No one's going to praise the astronomer that tells you, hey, I said a meteor was coming. Like, no one's going to be like, oh, on the last day of Earth, let's all praise the astronomer for being right about that. So, no, I don't think that saying right now that we should be concerned about it is going to do a whole lot of good. But deep down, I am. Henry, next one up in the show. Is there a UDFA who could surprise us this year? Good question. UDFA that can surprise the Falcons this year. Let me just look up all the UDFAs. That way I don't forget one. There wasn't one that really caught my eye too much. Like, maybe I've seen some good stuff about a DB, Jaden Price. That'd be my only suggestion. I'll go with Jaden Price. The Falcons, they did not get a very good UDFA class. Not that anyone gets a stellar class, but I never thought any of the UDFAs they got were some serious snags. Next question rolling in from Rel804, Virginia. What are the chances of Atlanta going out and getting a receiver and a defensive end that's looking for new contracts? Low on the wide receiver. Now, they just brought in James Washington, which I think was actually a bit of a seismic move because it showed, hey, we're going to have a lot of wide receiver packages, like heavy 3 wide receiver sets. Rondale Moore has primarily been running with the second-team offense, every so often getting the call up to the first-team offense. So I think there are some concerns that after Drake London and Darnell Mooney, there's a drop-off. I think adding what's-his-face from the Pittsburgh Steelers will satisfy that need, James Washington. But as for defensive end, it does feel like the Falcons are betting on this coaching staff to kind of develop and coach up some of the young pieces they have, which I don't fundamentally agree with. If they had drafted Michael Penix to start this year, sure, yeah, like you're probably not really in a major win playoff mode with the rookie quarterback. But when you spend $180 million on Kirk Cousins, the expectations are not make the playoffs. They are to win in the playoffs. You don't pay a quarterback $45 million to be the 6th seed and get bounced by 3 touchdowns in round 1. Like, that should not be the bar. And so if you're going to invest that much, why half-ass it? Go round out the rest of your roster. They didn't really do that. And that's something that maybe I'll be proven wrong on, but I'm definitely concerned about. Before we look at the final few questions on today's show, if you want to get a Falcons t-shirt and hat combo in your life, go to chatsports.com/ATL combo. I put that link in the comments and description of today's video. Re-up your Falcons wardrobe a little bit, but also saving some money because it's 45% off at chatsports.com/ATL combo for this hat t-shirt combination. Dat one Falcons fan, next one up on the show. After hearing what Arthur Blank had to say about the Penix pick, do you feel better about the decision to draft him? No. I don't think Arthur Blank speaking out to that changed my opinion. Now, what's done is done, so I'm not here to be a rain cloud on the pick. I'm rooting for Penix to be successful, and despite what a lot of haters in the comment section said, the evidence is there from January to April. Penix was always my 4th quarterback in this draft class. Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Michael Penix, J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix. Those were my rankings, and I stand by those rankings. So I was always very upbeat about Penix as a prospect. But the fundamental disagreement I have is they've done it numerous times now. They keep referencing the Packers. They keep saying, look how the Packers have operated. Seamless transitions from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love. The difference between Jordan Love and Michael Penix, about 20 spots in the draft. Like, the Packers use a late first-round draft pick because those picks, the hit rate is so much lower than the 8th overall pick. So if they use that 26th overall pick on Jordan Love and it didn't work out, okay, teams miss on late first-rounders pretty often. Like Tack McKinley, that doesn't set franchises back. When you're picking top 10, you have to make that top 10 pick count. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself in the top 10 next year, and someone else will be making the pick because the whole office will be fired. And so for the Falcons to use a top 10 pick on a quarterback when they just signed one, that was an opportunity to better your roster. Try to win a Super Bowl with Kirk Cousins. Like, sure, the Packers right now are happy to have Jordan Love, but let me ask you this. If the Packers had the opportunity to use that pick on T. Higgins and they win a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers, do you think they take the one Soupy or have 15 years of Jordan Love? They'd probably take the one Super Bowl. So I'm not convinced that because the Packers did it, it should work for Atlanta. They're not apples to apples. The Packers didn't use a top 10 pick on a quarterback. That keeps getting lost. And that's an extremely important detail. Taylor, next one up. How many Pro Bowlers we having this year? We had one last year in Lynch, and Jesse Bates. But I'm guessing at least 12 this year. Lower your sights. Man, what do you think even the record is for Pro Bowlers in a year? I don't think a guy should be counted as a Pro Bowler, by the way, if he's like the third one to get asked. Like the Pro Bowl should be everyone that gets nominated the first time. And if guys pass on it and other guys fill in, I don't think they should get credit for being a Pro Bowler because they were the replacement. But there was Lindstrom and Jesse Bates. I'll say those two guys again. I'll toss in Drake London. Our wide receiver is very competitive. I'll say either London, Pitts, or Robinson. One of those guys is going to make it. So those three for you. And then Kirk Cousins. So I'll go with 4 Pro Bowlers this year. Travis Basile. Any chance we move Anderson to outside linebacker in place of Zoe? Keeping Landman and Anderson on the field seems like a move. I'd love to find a way to get Caden Ellis, Nate Landman, and Troy Anderson on the field at the same time as much as possible. Those 3 players are 3 of your best 11 players on defense. So whatever Jimmy Lake needs to do to get the best 11 on the field, do it. Now, I know we're kind of going back in time a little bit with that many linebackers on the field, and that's not going to match up well with a lot of offensive personnel groupings, but I don't think you're going to see Nate Landman or Troy Anderson get kicked outside. I think maybe it would be Nate Landman before Troy Anderson that goes outside linebacker, but yeah, Lorenzo Carter, he's definitely fighting for a spot, fighting for a starting spot. All right, that will do it for us on today's mailbag. I appreciate everyone who hangs out with us every single week. If you have not subscribed, make sure you go ahead and do so. Lock yourself in for the best free Falcons content on YouTube. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching as always. I appreciate the flexibility in everyone's schedules for a Wednesday live show. But that will do it for us on today's live show. Enjoy the rest of your day. We're going to sign off, and we're going to catch up with everyone later with more Falcons content throughout the week.